All right, hey everybody, this is Joe Niemer with Cloud Academy. We're starting off our latest webinar, which is going to be on tips for passing the CKA and CKAD, the Kubernetes, official Kubernetes certifications. We're just going to wait another minute for all of our attendees to get online, and then we'll get started. In the meantime, so I'm a technical researcher and writer at Cloud Academy. You can see me a bit on our blog. And we're also going to be presenting with Logan Rockeye, who is our lead content developer for labs at Cloud Academy. He creates all these labs and is kind of our go-to expert on them.
Yep. Hi, everyone. So I'm Logan Rockeye, and for the purpose of this webinar, it's also relevant that I'm CKA and CKAD certified.
Right, obviously, that's very helpful. So I think we can jump right in. So we'll go through an agenda first. So in this webinar, we're going to cover a few things. We're going to give general Kubernetes context. What is it for some of those people who are less familiar? We're going to talk about the benefits of certifying, because we're talking about certification. It's the true official certification from the Cloud Native Computing Foundation. We'll talk about the two types of Kubernetes certifications that we're going to cover. So it's the Certified Kubernetes Administrator and the Application Developer. I'm going to give you some guidance on what certification to get, how to make that choice. Some tips on the actual exams, how to prepare before studying the actual, any of the mechanics of the exam, because there are certain things that you have to do, certain things that you have to have right with your laptop or PC. Tips on the actual certifications themselves. And Logan's going to give a demo of some of our content that are really good learning opportunities, such as live labs. And of course, at the end, we will take your questions. I'll just you guys will be able to just put them in the chat. You can put them in throughout the presentation, and we'll get to them at the end. So there we go. So first of all, we're going to start off about Kubernetes and why it's so popular everywhere across the world. So what is Kubernetes from a basic standpoint? So it's an open source container orchestration system. It's not the containers themselves, but it's the framework to help control all these. And you'll see that there are a lot of benefits, because it's not just Kubernetes can work across all sorts of different cloud providers and domains. When it does, it helps you automate a few things: the deployment, scaling, and management of these containers. And as I was mentioning it, working on different clouds, why is it so popular? Well, for the first thing, it's relatively new, yet it has a good amount of maturity to it already. And it's open source, so it's got a large community support to it. And it's backed by the Cloud Native Computing Foundation, which was started semi-recently by the Linux Foundation. As I alluded to, it's able to be used across multiple clouds. And there are a lot of good integrations with all sorts of third-party applications and services. Logan, I think we were talking about some of those earlier.
Yeah, and you mentioned working across multiple clouds. Kubernetes itself is really at the core of a lot of the multi-cloud efforts out there. So for example, Google's Anthos, which allows you to run workflows across different clouds. Kubernetes is at the core of that. And you might not realize that you're using Kubernetes if you're working with systems like Rancher or OpenShift. Even VMware is getting into Kubernetes, but Kubernetes has planted itself inside of all of those different very popular services.
Yeah, I guess so. Anthos was announced this year, so we're in 2019, was released in earlier 2019 at Google's big conference, and it sounds like they're trying to they know they're, at this point in time, they're currently in third, but with this, if and as it takes off, they can kind of get in through different cloud systems, I guess.
Yeah,
with
it's definitely
Anthos.
a very strategic move by Google.
Yeah. All right. Another interesting thing we wanted to just throw in there was, so Gartner, one of the major analysts, says that in just a few years, 75% of organizations are going to be running containerized apps in actual production environments. So that's a huge amount. Currently, the number is around 25%. And just to put some context in general also of how the growth is going to happen, it looks like in 2019, around the middle of 2019, really only about 20% of companies have migrated to the cloud so far. And so there's still a huge amount of growth to happen to the cloud in general, and then therefore by extension to containerized systems, larger organizations that want to start to utilize microservices, architectures, things like that. And all these things are going to be where an orchestration system like Kubernetes can shine. So why certify?
Yeah, I'll take this one. So the obvious one with any certification is to establish some credibility and add value to your own portfolio in the job market. That's one of the main drivers. But also for the next point, we have establishing a baseline of knowledge within an organization or within your team. If you decide that you're going to take Kubernetes into your own workflows and start using Kubernetes, it's nice to have everybody on the team establish that common baseline of knowledge. That's one of the common things that we see with our customers for why they are interested in these certifications.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think like having that sort of framework for teams to kind of build on, say everyone starts here, and then you're kind of starting from a good place, obviously.
Absolutely. And the last one that I'll mention is if you're interested in becoming a certified service provider for Kubernetes or a KCSP, you actually need to have 3 team members certified with the Certified Kubernetes Administrator certification. So if you're interested in promoting your company for a Kubernetes service provider, you'll need to be taking some CKA exams.
That is a good that's good to know, because I know I've seen for different sorts of cloud certifications. I mean, they're good to market yourself, good to prove what you're doing, but it's pretty cool that this is kind of an additional, it's a true stepping stone in order to get something else.
Absolutely.
As these sort of CSPs.
Yeah. And once you get the KCSP, your company will be promoted on the official Kubernetes website. So it can drive your bottom line.
All right. So, okay, what are the 2 main certifications? In this context, we're talking about first the CKA, Certified Kubernetes Administrator. So we'll just give you some basic details on this first certification. So in this type of certification, you're going to have 24 problems in it, and there are no multiple choice questions as opposed to some other types of cloud-based cloud provider certs. Everything is performance based, so they are challenging. Some other details on the certification itself. It's a 3-hour exam. The cost, $300, and you do get 1 free retake if you need to. Your passing score is a 74% or higher. And the certification is valid for 3 years. I believe they recently changed this, increased this from 2 up to 3 years. And you should try and recertify within that 3-year window. And these are the domains that the CKA itself covers. So it's an administrator, so maybe more trending toward DevOps, and it's going to cover some of the cool, interesting things. You know, you're going to, of course, start with your core concepts, but application lifecycle management, security, maintenance, logging, etc. And so the CKAD, the application developer, some details on that, and some of them are going to be like the CKA. In this one, it's 19 problems. Again, it's performance-based. It's not multiple choice. It's a 2-hour test as an exam as opposed to 3. $300 is the cost. Your passing score should be 66% or higher. This one's valid for 2 years. And the domains, this one is narrower in scope. So you'll see goes into some interesting things like multi-container pods, pod design, state persistence, things that are going to be more relevant to someone who's developing Kubernetes first applications.
Yeah, and I think just important to highlight that first point about being performance-based. So really, depending on your background and what certifications you may have taken in the past, it can be quite a different situation taking these certifications if you're used to multiple choice exams. Joe's going to get into what it's like to actually take the certification coming up.
Right. Yeah, and just to that point, well, we'll get to that, but I've heard from Logan and others, like it's an intense 3-hour exam. It's mentally, you need to be mentally focused because you're constantly, it's like solving real world problems. So which exam is best for you? Here's a high level overview. The CKA itself, what's it cover? Well, generally it covers your ability to administer Kubernetes clusters. Some of the roles that can use that makes sense for this type of certification are SREs, so site reliability engineers, and obviously anyone in operations and DevOps. And it can be helpful for any full stack dev or dev who just wants to develop for Kubernetes in general. And then getting more specific or more narrowly focused, the CKAD, so the application developer certification. As the CNCF says, it tests your ability to design, but build, monitor, and scale cloud native applications for Kubernetes. I think that's a really good succinct way to put it. And it's someone like we've said, it's someone like a dev, full stack dev or not, who wants to develop and deploy applications on Kubernetes. Now, we put a little note here. Of course, you can take both if you want, if you're unsure which one that you want to focus on, and both are definitely helpful to have, and there's no rules about just taking one.
Yeah, and I think if your job role sort of crosses both of those exams, I think you might learn a lot and establish yourself better in the job market, even having both if you need it.
Yeah, I'd say, and Logan, would you agree, is that the CKA is kind of going to be, I mean, there's going to be stuff between both exams that are shared, and CKA will have some stuff that the CKAD has as well.
Yeah, there's definitely some overlap in what they cover, but they do have their own unique parts as well. CKA, like you said before, is more broad. It can even touch on things that aren't necessarily strictly related to Kubernetes. But for example, how would you do backups? How would you facilitate doing operating system updates? Things that you might not think of just talking about Kubernetes, but they are important for cluster administrators to know.
Great. Okay, so taking the actual exams on exam day, etc. So the exams themselves are remote proctored. So you're going to be by yourself in a room with just your laptop or your desktop. You need to be able to do screen sharing. You're going to have a browser plugin. You're going to have access to your webcam and mic. You're going to actually have to hold up your webcam and show around the room to show that there's no one else there. And all applications are going to have to be closed except Chrome or Chromium browsers. Couple other small details: quiet private room, well lit, again, so that they can see what's going on, and no bright lights or windows. These are all just helpful tips. And your desk must be clear. You can take notes on your laptop using some sort of notepad app. I forget if it's something they provide through the plugin, or if it's just something on your actual laptop.
Yeah,
But
it's within the plugin itself. So there's
okay.
a button to open up a notepad where you can just jot down notes, but important that it is on your computer and you're not allowed to take physical paper notes.
Right. Yeah, they want your desk to be completely clear.
Mm-hmm.
So all the problems and your actual terminal will be in your browser. So it's all browser contained. And now some tips and strategies. So getting back to basics, like we started with our presentation, it's important to have a solid understanding of containers, like Docker, and just feel fluent with it, and feel very comfortable working on the command line, because obviously that is how Kubernetes is administered, and you're going to have to be doing things quickly within this exam. Hands-on practice is going to be really key to getting your knowledge cemented, and we've seen that studies show that practical experience really is the best way to kind of learn and retain all this stuff. There was even a recent study, like you can Google all sorts of things, but there's a recent study by University of Chicago specifically on hands-on learning with science, and just as usual, it shows the benefits of doing repetition of the actual work, as opposed to just reading some documentation or watching a lecture. Approaching things from all different avenues.
Especially for these certifications where they are performance-based and you're actually going to be performing those tasks in the exam.
Right. So some smaller things. You don't want to have to worry about anything. You use any of your brain power on the day of the exam for anything other than the exam itself. So prep your exam workspace. It's just your hardware in a clean area, like we mentioned in the prior slide. They do have an ID requirement that you'll have to show. So you have your primary ID, and if it's just basically with Latin characters, then all you need is that, and you'll need a secondary ID if you happen to have your name written with any non-Latin characters. They have more information on the CNCF website about this, but that's not obviously something that you don't want to scramble day of, like trying to find a second ID if you need it. Now, Linux Foundation themselves, they have sales and exams, so they are the source for all this. So it can only help to just get more and more practice.
And I'll mention that they're most well known for putting on massive sales on Black Friday and Cyber Monday. So if that works out for you, you can save a lot.
Right, and any time of there might be things any time of year that can be helpful with that.
Hmm.
And it's good to get comfortable managing your time by kind of just working on your command line chops, your cube control speed. Just that's those are the type of muscles that you're going to be working during the actual exam. So doing the actual work beforehand is gonna pay off in spades.
Hmm.
And we put a link here, but you'll be able to find that. It's pretty easy if you just Google Linux Foundation and CKA candidates, CKAD candidates. There's a whole candidate handbook there, and that's a good thing to look at. Just getting some more info for you.
Yeah, and that goes into gruesome details. So even on exam day, what kind of beverages you're allowed and what kind of containers you're allowed to have the beverages in, things like that.
All right, so now Logan's going to do a demo. Bear with us for a moment as we jump through some technical hoops to get this going on.
Absolutely. So now you might be wondering, well, what can I do to get prepared for these exam certifications? And Cloud Academy does have 2 learning paths available, and I'll touch on those at the end of the demo. I just wanted to start by showing this handbook that we referred to. This is what it looks like. It's, I think 33 pages of goodness. You definitely want to read through that so that you don't have any surprises on exam day. Also, if you want more information about those domains, and I highly recommend that you do check this out, you should check the CNCF curriculum, which provides details for both CKAD and CKA. So make sure you look at the most recent one. So this is the PDF for the most recent CKA exam curriculum. And it goes into each of those main domains and gives you examples of the kinds of tasks you would be expected to be able to perform in the exam. So if you can prepare yourself enough that you can go through all of these tasks, I think you'll be in a good situation for taking the exam. And that's exactly how I created the learning path here on Cloud Academy, so that you'll be able to knock off all of these tasks by the time you finish the learning path. So here's just an example of what a learning path looks like on Cloud Academy. This is our Certified Kubernetes Administrator exam learning path. And you can see all of the content that's in there. So it's divided into courses, hands-on labs, exams, and lastly, we have hands-on lab challenge, which is sort of our simulation of the actual exam. But yeah, when you go through all of these different pieces of content and you pass the challenge in the final exam, you'll be in a good situation for taking the actual Kubernetes certification exams. So I'll just dive into what this challenge looks like. So here's our certification challenge landing page. Tells you a little bit about what you might be asked to do. But if I dive in and actually jump into the certification simulation, you can see the instructions, and at the end there's some tasks that you need to perform, which are based on the actual certification exams, tasks that you might be asked to perform. And with lab challenges, you can run these things called checks. You'll see here that actually check the Kubernetes environment that Cloud Academy provides you to ensure that you actually have performed the task correctly. And if you can get green check marks for all of these checks, then you'll be given credit for passing this lab challenge. And I'll show you what this looks like as a student. If I sign in to the cluster, we provide you with a real Kubernetes cluster, so you don't need to worry about actually spinning up virtual machines on your own end. Cloud Academy provides everything that you need. And we give you a web-based console through AWS, through their session manager, and it's really close to what you might expect with the actual exam. What they provide you in the real exam is a single browser with your problem task definitions on the left and your browser-based terminal on the right. So I'll log in as the Ubuntu user, and we can just show you what that cluster looks like. So here we can see that using the top kube control command, we can see that there's 3 nodes in the cluster that you get provided. And these nodes have been prepared with certain pods and different resources that you need to perform tasks with. And then, of course, the lab challenge task checks that you can run will confirm if you actually solve those challenges correctly or not. So it's a little bit different from the real exam. In the real exam, you can't run checks, but for learning purposes, it's nice to be able to run the checks and get instant feedback as you're performing these challenges.
Yeah, I think what's cool about these lab challenges is because we've got hands-on labs, which are the real environment that gets deployed for you, and you can go in there and learn at your own pace. Then the lab challenges are like the hands-on labs, but it's one where you then have to go solve everything within a certain amount of time. So it's really a simulated, it's like a simulated exam, and it's a good way to prepare you for the real thing. And like Logan said, even though we don't give you, it's like the exam, but we do give you those checks so that you can get the feedback that you need in order to actually proceed forward.
Absolutely. And I'll just plug one final thing. If there are things that you want to sort of experiment with your preparation on your own, we provide a Kubernetes playground, which will spin up a Kubernetes cluster for you to play with, so you don't have any requirements on your own end to create virtual machines and things like that. We make it really easy for you to practice here on Cloud Academy. So that's the end of the demo. Yeah, I'll pass it back
Okay.
to you, Joe.
All right. Okay, thanks for that. So now we'll jump into our Q&A portion. Let's see what we have going on. So anyone, you can add questions in our chat box if you haven't already. If we can't get to all of them during this webinar, we will email you afterwards. So don't worry about that. Let me start to get through a few of them. Okay. So first question, and Logan, well, I'll read them and then you can answer, and I'll chime in too if I've got some input.
Okay.
How long should we prepare, or should a user prepare for the exam? Say like a month?
Okay, it's a good question, but I'd say it really depends on your level of experience. If you've been using Kubernetes in production for the past year, you might be in a position to walk in and take the exam. But if you're starting up completely new to containers, never used Kubernetes before, it might be worthwhile to prepare over the course of several months, maybe up to a year even. Of course, Cloud Academy has content to help you prepare for the Kubernetes certifications. There's also separate learning, there's also separate learning paths for Docker if you're totally new to the container ecosystem.
Yeah, I guess I think that's a good point. Like for people who are quite new, whether you're a student or not, or if you're just new to containers in general, like we want to give you the right guidance. So if you're at a newer level, it should be starting out with the more fundamental building block, which is the container itself. Does that make sense?
And I'd also add, if you do feel pretty confident that you're in a position to take the exam, you can always take the Cloud Academy exam and challenge, just to test that you are really in a position to take the certifications before you actually take the dive.
Yeah, those are just within our learning path. Those are just at the very bottom of the learning path. So you
Yeah,
can find those quickly, or you can just do it in any sort of search for it. We've got a pretty awesome new search algorithm that brings everything to the forefront quickly. Okay, we've got time, so I'll start to get through some more questions. Should you do one cert before the other? So between those two, I guess, Logan, like between the CKA and the CKAD.
okay. Yeah, so if you decide that you want to do both, it might depend on your experience again, but in general, the CKAD does have a more narrow scope. So you might find it more easy to prepare for the CKAD than the CKA, which is more broad, and you do need to learn things outside of what you would usually accomplish with the kube control command. So as an example, the most recent update to the curriculum for CKA added proficiency with kubeadm, or the kubeadmin command line tool as well. So just if you want to try to bite off the one with the more narrow scope first, that might be the best strategy if you're starting out.
And one general piece of advice that we were talking about amongst ourselves is CNCF updates these exams about every 3 months, I guess, based on the Kubernetes update cycle, but the domains that they cover stay the same, and generally it stays the same. So you don't have to freak out if you take an exam, are scheduled for an exam, but the exam has just recently been updated, because really the fundamental knowledge is going to still apply.
Absolutely, yeah. And I'd add that recent change, adding the kubeadm proficiency as part of the CKA, was the first change in several releases where there was actually something new that was added. So certainly it doesn't topics that they cover.
All right. And okay, we'll do another question. Do you need work experience to pass the exams? I guess that kind of goes with one of the first questions. Work experience can definitely be helpful because it's going to be practical, I would say. But if not work experience, then time to get some more actual learning practice and then hands-on experience.
Yeah. For these performance-based exams, it's really that hands-on experience. So if you're getting that experience at work, or you're getting it through our learning paths with all of our labs, one way or the other, you got to get that hands-on experience to really perform well with these exams.
Okay. There's a question on Kubernetes Playground. Can I use the Kubernetes Playground once? They're asking, or only use it once. I'm sorry.
No. So fortunately, if you want to use the Playground to try out a multitude of different tasks, you're free to use it as many times as you like. It's all included within your subscription for Cloud Academy.
I think it's a really helpful thing. It's kind of a really quick and easy way to just get in there and start doing stuff, because then you don't have to waste time with other sorts of account provisioning, and people can get sure, you can get discount codes or like free X number of hours on like any cloud provider, but sometimes that isn't enough, and sometimes it's just easier to just keep it simple. So it sounds like this Kubernetes, like the Kubernetes Playground, could be a real helpful for people.
Yeah, and that's certainly what we've heard from our customers.
I think we have time for a couple more. How does this one looks interesting. How does the CKA help with becoming a KCSP, which is the Kubernetes Certified Service Provider?
Right. So the KCSP, Kubernetes Certified Service Provider, is for organizations that provide enterprise service to customers that are using Kubernetes. And one of the requirements for becoming KCSP is to have 3 of your team members certified CKAs, so certified Kubernetes admins. The other requirements, like I mentioned, is that you're providing enterprise level support for customers using Kubernetes. And the last one is that you're a CNCF, Cloud Native Compute Foundation member. And if you have all those 3 requirements, then you can make an application to be a KCSP, and you'll have your organization listed on their Kubernetes official list of service providers.
It sounds like they've done a good and cool job of pretty quickly coming up with standardized things to really help kind of not just promote, but really like support everyone who wants to get involved with this whole initiative. So I think that's pretty interesting. So I think that's about all the time we have today. So Logan and I just want to say thank you for joining us. Anyone who we did not answer your questions, we will reach out to you by email. And as always, you can check us out. We've got a lot of videos related to these sorts of subjects on our YouTube page, or you can just go on to cloudacademy.com. If you're not a member yet, you can still see intro videos for all of the learning paths. So thank you again. We will write back to anyone who we didn't get to yet, and hope to see you guys at another webinar in the future.
Yep, thanks everyone, and good luck with all of your Kubernetes certifications.
Yep, good luck. Thank you.